of seriousness. It is the new collection. I stood back by the kitchen table, wiping my hands on a rag,
I
and
think it's
squinted at the
working
bag.
now.
From 10 feet away, it looked
I
impressive.
need.
But I own the real version of that bag in 3 different colors. I knew immediately that the stitching on the handle was slightly uneven and the gold hardware was too brassy. It was a high-quality fake, probably purchased from a back alley in Chinatown. But to my family, it was proof of her immense success. Brad, not wanting to be outdone, rolled up his sleeve to check the time on a bulky silver watch. "We are so sorry we are late, everyone,"
There it goes.
he announced loudly, making sure his wrist caught the light. "Time got away from us. I just closed a massive deal this morning and had to stop by the dealership. You know how it is." My Uncle Charles whistled in admiration. "Is that a Rolex, Brad?" Brad smirked and tapped the glass face. "You know it, Charles. Only the best for this family." I stifled a laugh. I knew for a fact that specific model had a 3-year waiting list and cost $40,000. Brad was a mid-level sales manager. Unless he had
Let's see
robbed a
if
bank,
it's
that watch was either
actually-
fake or financed on a credit card with an interest rate higher than his ego. They finally began to move toward the house, a loud laughing mass of admiration and envy. As the crowd parted, they finally came face to face with me. I stood there holding a tray of appetizers, waiting for a hello, or even a nod of acknowledgement. Monique stopped for a split second. Her eyes slid over me like I was a piece of furniture. She did not say hi.
I need to.
She did not ask how I was. She simply turned to Brad and said, "Babe, make sure you get a drink. I am face to face with me." They walked right past a tray of appetizers, waiting for a hello, perfume and cologne, or even a nod of acknowledgement.
See.
Monique to them for a split was not a sister. Her eyes
sister's
slid
not
over me
right.
like I was just part of the scenery, a background character in a movie of their
She did not
delusion.
ask
How I was. I tightened my grip
She
on the
simply
tray.
turned
To Brad and said,
"Enjoy
the spotlight while it
make
lasts.
sure you get a
Moment
drink.
I am face to face
Because
the bill for this performance
stood
right
there
past
holding
you a lot of
trays,
appetizers,
so make
waiting for a hello,
perfume and
or
cologne,
even a
and
nod
not
of
even the
acknowledgement
sanctuary
of the kitchen,
See.
hoping to
Monique
escape
I
the
was not a
suffocating
sister.
atmosphere
Her
of the
eyes
living
slid
room.
over me like I was
The air just
part
part
to
of
see
the
why.
background character in a movie of their
She did not
delusion.
ask
How I was.
tightened
I
my
focused
grip
on
on the
arranging
tray.
deviled eggs
Enjoy
into
the
a silver
spotlight
plate while it
Make sure
lasts.
you get a drink.
I am face to
Because
face. Because the bill for this performance right past you a lot of appetizers, waiting for a hello, the swinging or even a nod of acknowledgement of the kitchen, hoping to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the living
Sisters
room.
not
Just
trying
like the American
to
is
see
important
why.
as a background character in a movie of their delusion. How I was. I focused on arranging deviled eggs into a silver plate while it lasts. I am face to face. Because the bill for this performance right past you a lot of appetizers, waiting for a hello, long dramatic nod of acknowledgement of the kitchen, hoping to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the living room.
Not
Just
trying
like the American
to
is
see
important
why.
as a background character in a movie of their delusion. How I was. I focused on arranging deviled eggs into a silver plate while it lasts. Deviled eggs, I am face to face. Because the bill for this performance right past you a lot of appetizers, waiting for a hello, loud dramatic nod of acknowledgement of the kitchen, hoping to see you during the suffocating atmosphere of the living room.
Not
Just
trying
like the American is important as a background character in a movie of their delusion. How I was. My hands on arranging deviled eggs into a silver plate while it lasts. Deviled eggs, I am face to face. Because the bill I am right past you a lot of appetizers, waiting for a hello, loud dramatic nod of acknowledgement of the kitchen, hoping to see you during the suffocating atmosphere of the living room. Just like the American is important as a background character in a movie of their delusion. How I was. My hands on arranging deviled eggs into a silver plate while it lasts. Deviled eggs, I am face to face. Because the bill I am right past you a lot of appetizers, waiting for a hello, loud dramatic nod of acknowledgement of the kitchen, hoping to see you during the suffocating atmosphere of the living room. Just like the American is important as a background character in a movie of their delusion. How I was. My hands on arranging deviled eggs into a silver plate while it lasts. Deviled eggs, I am face to face. Because the bill I am right past you a lot of appetizers, waiting for a hello, loud dramatic nod of acknowledgement of the kitchen, hoping to see you during the suffocating atmosphere of the living room. Just like the American is important as a background character in a movie of their delusion. How I was. My hands on arranging deviled eggs into a
sit. Let's go home. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. See the water. That is so weird. It's starting to look at this. I don't know what happened. Let's go home. Sit down, Kingston. All right. Sit down, keep still. All right. Sit down, keep still. All right.
take out a personal loan, or maybe open a few credit cards, just to cover the 50,000. Monique will pay you back with interest next month, I promise. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me to take on $50,000 of debt for Monique? Vivian waved her hand dismissively. Oh, do not look at me like that. It makes perfect sense. Think about it, Simone. You do not have a husband. You do not have children. You do not own a house or have any assets the bank can seize. If the worst happens and the credit score takes a hit, it does not really matter for you. You live in a rental. You drive a beat-up car. You have nothing to lose. But Monique, she has a reputation. She is a public figure. We cannot let her credit rating drop. It would ruin the family image. The cruelty of her logic was breathtaking. To her, I was not just a blush. I was the sacrificial lamb. My financial future was expendable, because in her eyes I had no future worth protecting. She was willing to burn my credit to keep Monique warm. Mom, I said slowly, letting the words hang in the humid air. You are asking me to commit financial suicide so Monique can maintain her lifestyle. It is not suicide, she snapped, dropping the act. It is duty. You have lived off this family your whole life. We fed you, we clothed you. Now you have a chance to finally be useful. Do not be selfish, Simone. Sign the papers on Monday. She did not wait for an answer. She just smoothed her dress, turned on her heel, and walked back toward the music, leaving me standing in the dark, with the realization that my mother did not just her my sister. She was actively willing to destroy me to save her. I looked my mother dead in the eye. The humidity of her felt suffocating, but my mind was
That's what it
crystal
looks like.
clear. For
Pretty much it's
34
gonna
years,
go
I had said yes.
up.
Yes, I will babysit. Yes, I will tutor Monique. Yes, I will step back so she can shine. But tonight, the word
Wow.
no tasted like
I
freedom.
want to say 4
No
inches.
moment.
4
I
inches.
said, my voice steady and low. I will not do it.
And we'll do
Vivian blinked her mouth
number
slightly open,
5.
as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. Excuse me. I do not think I heard you correctly, Simone. I just explained that this is an emergency. Your sister's reputation is at stake. I heard you perfectly, Mom, I replied, crossing my arm. And my answer is still no. Monique is 32 years old. If she has overextended herself, that is her problem, not mine. Naming a debt after me does not make it disappear. It just transfers the burden, and I am done carrying burdens that do not belong to me. The transformation in my mother face was instant and terrifying. The sweet conspiratorial smile vanished, replaced by a snarl of pure venom. She took a step closer, his finger jabbing into my chest. You selfish little brat, she hissed, her voice shaking with rage. How dare you? After everything I have done for you, I fed you, I clothed you, I put a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me, by watching your sister drown when you could easily save her. She is not drowning, Mom. She is living a lie, I countered calmly. And you are enabling her. Do not. You lecture me. Vivian shouted, her volume rising dangerously close to being heard by the party guests. You are just jealous, aren't you? You have always been jealous of her. You cannot stand that Monique is beautiful and successful and loved by everyone while you are just a bitter, lonely nobody with a dead-end job. You want to see her fail because it makes you feel better about your own pathetic life. Her words were designed to hurt, to target the deepest insecurities of a daughter who just wanted to be loved. But they bounced off me. I knew who I was. I knew what I had built. And I knew that the woman standing in front of me was not protecting a daughter, she was protecting an investment. Think whatever you want, Mom, I said, stepping back out of her reach. But I am not signing anything. Not today. Not ever. Vivian glared at me, her chest heaving. Fine. Be that way. But do not expect any sympathy from us when you die alone with your cats. You are dead to me, Simone. She smoothed her hair, fixed her smile, and turned back toward the light of the party, leaving me standing in the darkness. I watched her go, feeling a strange sense of lightness. She thought she had just cut me off, but in reality, she had just set me free. I emerged from the shadows of the garage and stepped back into the warm amber glow of the string lights. My mother was already at the center of the patio, holding a fresh glass of wine and wearing a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She had moved fast. In the 2 minutes it took me to compose myself, she had already set the stage for my public execution. She waited until I was within earshot of the main table before she raised her voice just enough to carry over the sound of the jazz band. It really breaks my heart, she sighed dramatically,
Right?
placing a hand on Monique's shoulder. Poor Monique is just working herself to the bone. You know how it is when you are building an empire. You have millions in assets, but sometimes the cash flow just does not catch up fast enough. It is the burden of being a business tycoon. Monique looked down at her lap, playing the part of the weary martyr to perfection. I just try my best, Mom, she whispered loud enough for the table to hear. Vivian shook her head, casting a disappointed glance in my direction. It is just a shame that not everyone in this family understands that kind of pressure. She took a sip of wine and gestured toward me with the glass. Take Simone, for example. She has her nice, safe little job. She makes her little hourly wage, and she hoards it like a dragon. She has no idea what it takes to take risks. And when her own sister needs a tiny bit of temporary support, she turns her back. The conversation at the table stopped dead, forks lowered to plate. All eyes turned to me. They did not see a sister who had just refused to be financially abused. They saw a stingy, ungrateful woman who refused to help the golden child. My Aunt Paula shook her head, her pearl earrings trembling. Oh, Simone, really? Family helps family. That is the rule.
Take these.
Uncle Charles chimed in, wiping steak sauce from his chin. You know, Simone, money is no good if you do not use it to lift up your people. You should be proud to help Monique. She is the one putting our family name on the map. You are just living in the background. I walked past them, feeling their judgment like a physical weight. My mother had masterfully twisted the narrative. In her version, Monique was not broke. She was just illiquid due to massive success. And I was not prudent. I was selfish. I saw Brad smirk at me from across the table, raising his glass in a mock toast. He knew exactly what was happening. They were shaming me into submission, hoping the social pressure would force me to open my wallet. I reached my exile table near the trash cans and sat down. I did not defend myself. I did not scream that Monique was drowning in credit card debt or that Brad was a fraud. I simply picked up my plastic fork and took a bite of the cold salmon. Let them talk, I thought. Let them paint me as the villain. It will make the moment I buy the canvas they are painting on so much sweeter. I checked my phone one last time. The transfer for the acquisition of the house mortgage had just cleared. They were judging the landlord while eating at her table, and they did not even know it. To dispel the awkward tension that had settled over the patio, Brad decided it was time to change the narrative. He knew that the whispers about Monique credit card debt were dangerous, so he did what he always did. He doubled down on a lie. He stood up, refilling his wine glass to the brim, and cleared his throat, demanding the attention of the entire table. You know, everyone is so focused on the small bumps in the road, he announced, his voice booming with false confidence. But they fail to see the highway to success that we are speeding down. Monique and I are not worried about petty cash flow because tomorrow morning everything changes. My mother perked up, sensing a lifeline. What do you mean, Brad? Tell us the good news. Brad grinned, leaning back and unbuttoning his suit jacket. Well, I was not going to say anything until the ink was dry. But since we are all family here, I might as well share. As well, Alpha Tech is about to secure a massive infusion of capital. I have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 sharp
Layer one.
with the top brass at Horizon Ventures.
Layer two.
I froze. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. Horizon Ventures was not just a random investment firm. It was my firm. It was the company I had built from the ground up, the company where I held the title of senior managing partner. I knew every deal that came through our doors, and I knew every pitch scheduled for the week. Brad continued, unaware that the shark he was trying to swim with was sitting 10 feet away, eating potato salad. We are talking about a Series A round of $5 million. They read my prospectus and frankly they were blown away. The senior partner personally requested the meeting, said my vision was exactly what the market needs right now. I slowly lowered my fork to the plate. I did not remember requesting a meeting with the Brad Miller. I pulled up my mental calendar. I did have a pitch meeting scheduled for 9 in the morning, but my assistant had listed it under the company name AT Solutions. It was a low priority screening meeting usually handled by junior associates, but I had decided to take it personally because the financial discrepancies in their application were so flagrant, I wanted to reject them to their face. I had no idea until this exact second that AT Solutions stood for Alphatech. The family erupted in cheers. $5 million, my Uncle Charles shouted, raising his ears. That is the big league, son. Monique looked relieved, her earlier panic replaced by smug satisfaction. See, Mom, I told you. We are going to be richer than you can imagine. And to think some people were full credit.
Kingston.
I watched them celebrate a victory that did not exist. Brad was lying through his teeth. No one had told him we were blown away. We had flagged his company for a forensic audit because his projected revenue numbers
Don't
looked
spend this with my stuff over there.
He was walking into an interrogation, not
Come
a
here.
coronation. I took a sip of water to hide the small, dangerous smile playing on my lips. Horizon Ventures is a very prestigious firm, Brad. I said, my voice cutting through the applause. They are known for doing extremely thorough due diligence. Are you sure your books are ready for that level of scrutiny? Brad laughed, waving his hand dismissively. Please, Simone, stick to data entry. The partners at Horizon are big picture thinkers like me. They do not obsess over every little receipt. We are going to bond over vision, not spreadsheets. Tomorrow, I walk in there as a supplicant, and I walk out as a multimillionaire. I nodded slowly. You are right, Brad. Tomorrow is going to be
You're not coming up.
Yes, I promise you that. The celebration at the table continued, but the atmosphere had shifted from me. While my family saw a conquering hero in Brad, I saw a man walking blindfolded off a cliff. I watched him basking in the adoration of my mother and cousins, his face flushed with wine and victory. He was so confident, so utterly convinced of his own genius, that he had missed the most obvious red flag in the world. Venture capital firms do not send senior partners to meet with seed stage startups unless there is a major problem or a major opportunity. And given that I had personally flagged his file for irregularities, I knew exactly which one it was. I decided to give him one last chance to humble himself, one last off-ramp before the crash. I cleared my throat loud enough to cut through the chatter. Brad, I said, keeping my voice low and serious. I know you are excited, but are you absolutely certain that this meeting is a formality? Horizon Ventures is not just a bank. They are ruthless about compliance. If there is even a single decimal point out of place in your projections, they will tear you apart. The table went quiet again. My mother slammed her fork down. Oh, for heaven's sake, Simone, why do you have to be such a wet blanket? Can you not just be happy for him? Brad held up a hand silently. No, let her speak, Vivian. It is cute. He turned to me, a smirk playing on his lips that made me want to evict him right then and there. Simone, I appreciate your concern, really. It is touching that you think you understand how high-level finance works. But you are looking at this through the lens of an employee, a worker drone. You think rules matter. You think compliance matters. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, invading my space. In the big leagues, Simone, it is about the person. It is about the handshake. The partners at Horizon saw my name, they saw my background, and they saw the potential. The numbers are just boring details for the accountants to figure out later. Tomorrow is just a victory lap. We are going to shake hands, drink some expensive scotch, and sign the papers. It is a done deal. I held his gaze, my expression unreadable. So you are saying you have not actually prepared to the due diligence stage? You are just walking in there and doing this prayer. Brad laughed.
Sometime.
Bringing quantum physics to
Sure,
a
everything.
There is no prayer involved, Simone. It is pure strategy. But I do not expect you to get it. Honestly, I would be surprised if you even knew where the Horizon building was.
Zola followed you back.
It is in the financial district inside one of those glass towers where the security guards make more money than you do. People like you, Simone, you do not even get past the lobby. You certainly do not get invited to the boardroom on the 45th floor. He sat back, satisfied with his insult. So do yourself a favor. Stick to your data entry. Let the adults handle the business. And maybe if you are nice, I will bring you back a souvenir pen from the meeting. I smiled. It was a genuine smile this time because the trap was set, and he had just walked right into the center of it with both feet. You are right, Brad, I said softly. I probably would not fit in at a place like that. I picked up my glass of water and took a sip, hiding the fact that I did not just fit in at the Horizon building. I owned the 45th floor, and tomorrow morning when he walked into my boardroom, he was going to wish he had never known my name. The catering staff cleared the dinner plates and wheeled out the birthday cake. It was a three-tiered
Before the drawer or after the drawer?
Right here.
covered in gold leaf and edible orchids. My mother had clearly instructed the baker to make sure
the
it
middle of
was
the drawer?
expensive enough for
No, I'm
Instagram.
not doing the drawer at all.
Monique immediately positioned
No, you're
herself
on the
next
bear,
to
but it's the
Grandma
middle of the
Patty,
drawer.
directing
Yeah.
the photographer to get the perfect angle. She posed with her hand on Grandma's shoulder, smiling that practiced, terrifying smile, while everyone else sang happy birthday.
Right here.
Probably in his room.
With Chewy, never run out of tailored nutrition. There's
Probably.
Co,
That's where
weight
you
loss,
was.
and more.
No, I'm not doing the drawer at all.
Monique immediately positioned
No, you're
herself
on the
next
bear,
to
but it's the
Grandma
middle of the
Patty,
drawer.
directing the photographer to get the perfect angle. She posed with
This is
her
us saying
Okay, that hit those two. Now I can see this.
everyone else
for me, Alexis,
Wake up.
they all elect the party because it brings pleasure to all.
He didn't sleep.
That's how it makes you feel.
I thought he was in there watching TV.
One in four taxpayers is a victim of identity theft.
We're not
I'm gonna
just
do
taxing
the
Americans.
rest of 5 and then do 6.
You're not paying
Done with this. I think it'll be
It's
fun. Or
that guarantee. It gets more money back. They all elect the party.
Looking for robust treatment with no hidden costs? Green Curves. You can access prescription weight loss pills
yeah, just spell
at
that in a
one
basement.
click.
Pretty.
And unlike other businesses, there are no
But I have
costs
yours.
or membership fee.
I think it's
Your plan includes nutrition and
What I was supposed to do for you.
personalized
I
care,
forgot all
and
about.
unlimited access to 24/7 support to help you reach your
No,
goals.
this.
Find the treatment that works
Look
for
at
your
you
body
move it.
and
You see.
future. Start
It's
today
the one with
at
the
orphans.com.
skull on it. Oh yeah.
I stood at
I
the
had
back
to take
of
yours
my
off the
exile
back.
table watching the flickering candles and felt a strange sense of
These.
detachment. In the past, moments like this would have made me feel small. I would have felt the sting of being on the periphery of my own family. But tonight, I just felt like a director watching the final act of tragedy. I knew something they did not. I knew that the foundation of their arrogance was made of sand, and the tide was coming in fast. Grandma Hattie blew out the candles with a surprising amount of lung power for an 80-year-old. The family cheered and clapped. As the smoke drifted up into the night air, Grandma looked around the circle of faces. She ignored my mother, who was already trying to cut the first slice, and locked eyes with me across the patio. Simone, baby, come closer, she called out. Her voice was strong and commanded instant silence. I walked forward, stepping into the circle of light. Yes, Grandma. She looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes, the same eyes that had seen the check inside the notebook earlier. I have been meaning to ask you something all night, she said. Since you are so busy working all the time, I never really know what is going on with you. Where are you living these days? Are you still in that little basement apartment in Queens? You know, the one where the radiator clanks all night and the ceiling leaks when it rains? The question hung in the air, heavy and expectant. The entire family turned to look at me. I could see the pity in my Aunt Sarah's eyes. I could see the smug satisfaction on Brad's face. They loved this narrative. The narrative where Simone was struggling. The narrative where Simone was the cautionary tale of what happens when you do not have their kind of ambition. I opened my mouth to answer, but Monique cut me off before I could get a word out. She stepped forward, swirling the remnants of her champagne. Oh, Grandma, do not embarrass her,
Got on
she
my
said,
nails,
letting
so
out a
I was
short,
gonna
cruel laugh.
do something with
You
that,
know
but
how expensive the city has become. Rents are
Just a minute.
skyrocketing. Monique turned to look at me, her eyes gleaming with malice. She is probably living in a shared space with a bunch of college students. You know, bunk beds and chore wheels. Anything to save a few dollars, right, Simone? I bet she is splitting a studio with 3 other people just to afford the Metro card to get to her little temp job. My mother chuckled, shaking her head. Well, we all make choices. Monique chose success, and Simone chose well, whatever this is. The cousins snickered. The air was thick with their superiority. They thought they were punching down, kicking me while I was already on the ground. They had no idea that I was not on the ground. I was flying 30,000 feet above them, and I was about to drop the payload. I placed my plastic fork down on the flimsy table with a deliberate slowness, drew every eye in the garden. The laughter from Monique's joke about my imaginary bunk beds was still rippling through the air, but it died in my throat as I stood up. I picked up my paper napkin and dabbed the corners of my mouth, taking a moment to smooth the front of my black silk shirt. I looked at Monique, whose smirk was faltering slightly under my direct gaze. Then I turned my attention fully to Grandma Hattie. Actually, Grandma, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet patio without a hint of hesitation. I moved out of Queens last month. The commute was getting a bit too long. My mother let out a scoff, ready to make another comment about me moving further out to the suburbs to save money. But I did not give her the chance. I bought a place in the city. I continued, locking eyes with my mother. It is nothing too extravagant, really. Just a little penthouse overlooking Central Park. The reaction was immediate and absolute. The silence that descended on the backyard was so heavy, it felt physical. The ambient noise of the party, the clinking of glasses, the murmurs of conversation, and even the jazz band seemed to vanish into a vacuum. For a solid 10 seconds, the only sound was the chirping of crickets in the hedges and the distant hum of traffic from the highway.
some coffee.
My mother's mouth hung open slightly. Her glass of wine tilted dangerously to the side. Brad, who had been in the middle of a boastful laugh, froze with his mouth still shaped in a grin that no longer reached his eyes. Monique looked as if I had just spoken in an alien language. Her brain was clearly trying to process the words penthouse in Central Park, coming from the mouth of the sister she had spent a lifetime devaluing. I watched the color drain from Brad's face. Unlike the others, he worked in sales. He knew real estate. He knew that a penthouse on Central Park West did not cost thousands, it cost millions. It cost more than his entire life earnings combined. I saw the gears turning in his head, trying to calculate the math, trying to find the lie. A penthouse. Monique finally stammered, her voice shrill and breaking the silence like a dropped plate. What are you talking about, Simone? Like a sublet? Or are you house sitting for someone wealthy? I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. No, Monique. I bought it. It is on the 45th floor. The sunset over the reservoir is actually quite similar to the view from here, minus the mosquitoes. I did not elaborate. I did not explain how I afforded it. I did not mention the bonuses or the dividend. I just let the statement hang there, a massive, undeniable fact that showed a reality. I saw Grandma Patty cover her mouth, her eyes dancing with delight. She knew. She was the only one who realized that the game was over. The rest of them were just standing in the wreckage of their assumptions, wondering when the ceiling had collapsed on their heads. The silence was finally broken not by a gasp of awe, but by the wet, violent sound of Monique choking. She had tried to swallow her champagne at the exact moment I spoke, and the liquid went down the wrong pipe. She coughed violently, in a fine mist of expensive vintage sparkling wine, all over the pristine white tablecloth and onto the sleeve of Brad's suit jacket. Brad pounded on her back, but his eyes were locked on me. Then he started to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and erupted into a full-blown belly laugh that echoed off the carved walls. Laughed so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes, shaking his head, as if I had just told the funniest joke in the world. Oh, that is rich, Simone, he gasped, struggling to catch his breath. You almost had me for a second. Central Park. Wow, you really committed to the bit. He straightened up, adjusting his wet jacket, and looked at the rest of the confused family. Judge do not get. She's not saying she owns the penthouse. She is saying she lives there, as in she is alive and health. The tension in the room instantly evaporated, replaced by a wave of relief. Of course, that makes sense. That fit their worldview. Brad pointed a finger at me, grinning. That is it, right, Simone? You got a job as a housekeeper or maybe a nanny for some hedge fund guy.
One more to do.
And part of the compensation is a room in the servants'
Oh,
quarters.
this one's gonna add one.
Hey, there is no shame in that. I hear those rich guys tip really well during the holidays. Maybe that is how you afforded the Honda. My mother Vivian let out a long, exasperated sigh, pressing her hand to her chest. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and embarrassment.
One more to do.
Simone, why do you have to be so
This
dramatic?
one's gonna add
You
one.
nearly gave your sister a heart attack. Why could not you just say you found a new job as a maid, instead of making it sound like you are some kind of real estate mogul? She stood up and walked over to me, lowering her voice to a hard whisper. Stop lying to try and impress us. It is pathetic. You are making a fool of yourself. Do you think we are stupid? We know exactly how much you make. You can barely afford rent in Queens, let alone a property in Manhattan. Just sit down, shut up, and stop trying to steal my thunder. I looked at them, at the desperate way they clung to their version of reality. They could not accept that I was successful, so they rewrote the story to make me a servant. It was easier for them to believe I was scrubbing toilets in a penthouse than owning one. I picked up my glass of water and took a slow, deliberate sip. You are right, Ryan, said Colin. I should have been clearer. It is alive in position. Technically, it is true. I lived there, and I was in a position of power, but I let them have their moment. I let them laugh and roll their eyes and go back to their cave. Because the higher they climbed on their pedestal of arrogance, the harder they would fall when I kicked it out from under them. I looked around the table at the faces of my family. They were smiling again, comfortable in their
Okay, I'll
delusion.
start at the
My
bottom
mother had
again.
actually picked up her
Right here.
fork and resumed eating the
Start at the
cake,
bottom.
as if the crisis had been averted. To them, the idea of me being a servant was comforting. It restored the natural order of things, where Monique was the princess, and I was the peasant. I realized then that no amount of truth would penetrate their wall of denial. They needed me to be a failure to justify their own choices. I shrugged my shoulders, a simple motion that conveyed everything and nothing. You can believe whatever you want, I said quietly. It really makes no difference to me. I picked up my purse from the ground, slinging the strap over my shoulder. I turned to Grandma Hattie and squeezed her hand one last time, letting my fingers linger on the cool leather of the notebook I had given her. Happy birthday, Grandma. Enjoy your evening. I will call you tomorrow. Then I addressed the table at large, keeping my expression blank. I am afraid I have to head back to the city now. I have a very early start tomorrow morning. I have a board meeting at 9:00 sharp, and I cannot be late. Brad practically choked on his laughter again. He leaned back in his chair, unbuttoning the top button of his shirt, looking at me with glazed, amused eyes. He swirled the wine in his glass, staring at me like I was a toddler playing dress-up. A meeting, he repeated loud enough for the neighbors to hear. What kind of meeting are we talking about here, Simone? Is it the neighborhood watch? Or maybe the tenants association is meeting to discuss who takes out the recycling bins? Monique giggled, covering her mouth with her napkin. Oh, stop it, Brad. Maybe she is meeting with the other maids to organize a union. You know, demand better cleaning supplies. My mother sighed, waving a hand at me without looking up. Just go, Simone. Do not make a scene. And try not to wake up your employers when you get back to the penthouse. Rich people hate it when the house is noisy. I stood there for one final second, burning the image of their faces into my mind. The smugness, the cruelty, the absolute certainty that they were better than me. I looked directly at Brad. I looked at the wine stain on his jacket and the fake watch on his wrist. It is a very important meeting, actually. I said, my voice cool and even. It is about the future of a company that is currently on the brink of disaster. I think you would find it fascinating. Brad waved me off, his eyes already drifting back to the bottle of wine. Yeah, sure. Go save the world, Simone. Just do not miss your bus. It is a very important meeting.
Yeah, all the brands that want it, the prices that let you do it all. Sierra's Henry. I'm going to save on insurance for Liberty Liberty. Soon for Lawrence person.
Waved me off, his eyes already drifting back to the bottle of wine. Yeah, sure. Go save the world, Simone. Just do not miss your bus.
Yeah, all the brands that want it, the prices that let you.
Your life skills weren't set up right.
Sierra's Henry.
Watch this finely tuned combo. Moose and Timming all locked in. I'll be the melon flat.
Let's check out Ultimate Virus, the Dragon Serpent Virus. Wow, these dragons look really scary. But my cousin says if you smash and trip and chip on a virus and clicks.
Watch this finely tuned combo.
I turned and walked away. My heels clicked on the pavement, a steady rhythm of approaching justice. They thought I was walking away in defeat. They had no idea I was walking toward the button that would detonate their entire world. Goodbye, Brad, I whispered to myself as I reached the side gate. Don't be late tomorrow. I hate waiting.
What are you
I
doing?
reached the edge of the patio where the stone path met the driveway and paused. Behind me, the laughter was dying down, replaced by the clinking of silverware as my family returned to their meal. They had dismissed me. I was gone from their minds, relegated back to the status of a nuisance. But I had one
Why are you
final part to
growling at
play
me?
before I disappeared into the night.
What?
My phone vibrated against my palm. It was George, my executive assistant. His timing, as always, was impeccable. I accepted the call and deliberately pressed the speakerphone icon. I did not hold the phone up to my ear. I held it in front of me casually, adjusting my purse strap, ensuring the volume was loud enough to carry across the humid evening air.
What?
Go ahead, George, I said, my voice projecting clearly toward the table where Brad was pouring another glass of wine. The voice that floated out of the speaker was crisp, professional, and impossible to mistake for a friend playing a prank. It was the voice of a man who managed billion-dollar schedules. Good evening, Miss Brooks, George said. I just received confirmation from the pilot. The helicopter is fueled and waiting for you at the West 30th Street heliport. We have a slot cleared for immediate takeoff. I saw movement at the dinner table. Brad's hand froze mid-pour. The wine bottle hovered over his glass. Excellent, I replied, keeping my tone bored and efficient. What is the estimated flight time? 35 minutes to East Hampton, George replied. The legal team is already at
He's in there. He's out of
the
he's
merger
in another one
documents for the
now.
acquisition of
He's
Kincaid
in another
Industries
one
are ready
now.
for your signature. The partners are anxious to
He's in
close
another
this deal
one now.
tonight before the Asian markets open. I saw
Yes, he
Brad
is.
drop the wine
Go
bottle.
see.
It hit the edge of the table with a loud thud, tipping over and
And
spilling
it's
dark
in the
red
living
liquor
room.
all over the white tablecloth for the
I
second
know you
time
was in
that
there and
night.
he left you, but he's
But
in
he
there
did
now.
not move to clean it up.
He's in there. He's
He
in
did
there
not
now.
even blink, staring at my back, his mouth slightly open. Helicopter, merger, acquisition, Asian markets. These were not words used by data entry clerks. These were not words used by housekeepers. These were the words of the masters of the universe, the people Brad desperately pretended to be, but never actually met. I ignored the sound of the spilled wine. That is fine, George, I said. Tell the pilot I am 5 minutes away, and have the legal team prep the final clause regarding the liquidation of assets. I want to be done by midnight. Understood, Miss Brooks. See you shortly. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my bag. I did not turn around to see their faces. I did not need to. I could feel the confusion radiating off my feet. The silence behind me was different.
Okay,
It was
okay,
not the
here I
silence
come.
of judgment. It was the
Here I come.
silence of fear.
We're
They
gonna
were
go
trying
right
to
now.
reconcile the image of
Alright.
Caesar's failure with
Hold on,
the
guys.
just ordered a helicopter to sign a merger deal. I opened the door to my rusted Honda Civic and slid into the driver's seat. As I turned the key and the engine sputtered to life, I glanced into the
Okay,
computer.
okay. Here
Brad was standing up, leaning over the patio railing, his eyes locked on my car. He looked pale. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. And in a way he had. He had seen the
I had to go outside.
I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway, leaving them in the dust. The first seed of doubt had been planted. By tomorrow morning it would grow into a forest of panic. As my taillights faded into the darkness of the highway, I knew they would follow me. Their egos were too fragile to let the mystery go unsolved. Sure enough, as I merged onto the expressway, I saw the distinctive xenon headlights of the red Porsche Panamera weaving through traffic behind me. Brad and Monique were not going back to the party to finish their cake. They were on a mission to expose what they thought was my greatest lie yet. Inside their rental car, I could imagine the conversation perfectly. Brad was probably gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white, telling Monique that I was clinically insane, that I had hired an actor to call me, and that I was actually driving to a motel or a trailer park. They needed to see me fail. They needed to catch me in the act of being ordinary so they could sleep at night. I kept my speed steady, driving exactly at the limit. I led them out of the suburbs and across the bridge, the skyline of Manhattan.
Are they still outside?
Against the night sky. I did not head toward Queens. I did not head toward the gritty industrial parks or the crowded walk-ups. I drove straight into the heart of the beast. I turned onto 57th Street, also known as Billionaire's Row. This was a street where a parking spot cost more than most American homes, and where the air itself seemed to smell of old money and power. I watched in the rearview mirror as the Porsche hesitated at the intersection. They were confused. Why would the poor relation be driving her rusted Honda Civic down the most expensive street in the world? I signaled left, approaching the private underground entrance of the Glass Spire, one of the most exclusive residential towers in the Western Hemisphere. The entrance was guarded by a heavy iron gate and a security team that included former Secret Service agents. To the casual observer, it looked like an impenetrable fortress. To me, it was simply home. I rolled down my window as I pulled up to the limestone archway. The guard, a stoic man named Henry, who had seen me at my best and my worst, stepped out of the booth. He did not ask for identification. He did not ask for a delivery code. He saw my face and immediately pressed the button to open the massive steel gates. "Good evening, Miss Brooks," Henry said, his voice carrying over the street noise. "Welcome home." Brad had pulled the Porsche up to the curb 2 car lengths back, his hazard lights blinking. I saw him scramble out of the driver's seat, phone in hand, recording everything. He probably expected the guard to turn me away or direct me to the service loading dock around the back where the cleaning crews entered. Instead, he watched as the gates parted for the dented glass,
My stitch.
as if it were a royal carriage. He watched the head of security salute me with genuine respect.
My stitch.
He paused for just a second before driving into the brightly lit
You
sanctuary
can't
of
take
the
that.
garage. I saw Brad lower his phone,
You tried
his
to
mouth
steal a
hanging open
stitch.
in a silent scream of disbelief. Monique was leaning out the window, staring up at the building that scraped the stratosphere, disappearing into the clouds. They were looking at a building where the monthly maintenance fee was higher than Brad's annual salary. They had followed the rabbit down the hole, only to discover the rabbit owned the entire warren. The morning sun bounced off the glass facade of the Horizon Ventures building, creating a blinding tower of light that seemed to pierce the sky. At exactly 8:45, Brad Miller stepped out of his rental car onto the pavement of the financial district. He looked like a man ready to conquer the world, or at least a man desperately trying to convince everyone he could. He was wearing his best navy blue suit, which was slightly too shiny under the morning light, and he had applied enough cologne to suffocate a small elevator. He adjusted his tie, checked his reflection in the building's glass doors, and marched inside with the swagger of a CEO in waiting. The lobby of Horizon Ventures was a cathedral of
She
capture.
about to sit in here and start
The
barking
floors were
again.
Italian marble, the ceiling soared 3 stories high, and the air smelled of money and expensive espresso. Men and women in bespoke suits whispered into phones and moved with purpose. Brad walked straight to the main reception desk, ignoring the line of visitors. He leaned against the polished stone counter, tapping his fingers impatiently. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said to the young woman behind the desk, flashing his bright, fake smile. "Brad Miller here for a 9 o'clock with the senior partners. You can ring them up and let them know the talent has arrived." The receptionist did not look up immediately. She finished typing an email, her face illuminated by the soft glow of her monitors. She was dressed in a sharp blazer that probably cost more than Brad's entire outfit.
Hey, don't you want to do me a big, 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 big favor?
They were cool
Grab me a
professionals,
water.
utterly unimpressed. "Name?" she asked flatly. Brad blinkered, his smile faltering slightly. "Brad Miller, CEO of Alpha Tech. I have a meeting regarding a Series A capital injection. It is the biggest meeting on your schedule today." The receptionist typed his name into her system with agonizing slowness. She scrolled down, then clicked a mouse button. "Ah, yes. Mr. Miller." She picked up a phone and spoke quietly into the receiver. "He is here." "Yes. Understood." She hung up and looked back at Brad. "Mr. Miller, your meeting has been pushed back by 15 minutes. The senior managing partner is currently wrapping up an international call. You will have to wait in the holding area." Brad's jaw tightened. "Pushed back." "Listen, honey, I do not think you understand. My time is extremely valuable. I have investors lining up around the block. I cannot just sit around in the lobby." The receptionist expression did not change. He reached under the desk and produced a plastic badge on a generic orange lanyard. It had the word "visitor" printed on it in large bold letters. "Everyone waits, Mr. Miller,"
I don't mind.
she said, sliding the badge across the marble counter.
No, she's not.
"Please slip this to your lapel where it is clearly
She's cool.
visible.
She's cool.
Security will escort you to the elevators when we are ready for you. Do not wander past the turnstiles." Brad stared at the orange badge. It was humiliating. It was the kind of badge given to delivery drivers and repairmen, not future tech employees. He looked around the lobby, hoping no one had heard her dismissive tone. The tech involved that Brad Miller does not like to
I
keep
know.
waiting.
I know.
The receptionist gave a quick smile that sent a
For real?
shiver down his spine. "Oh, I think the boss is very aware of who
You're
you
coming
are,
in here to
Mr.
talk to
Miller.
me?
Please take a seat." Brad marched over to the waiting area, flipping the orange badge to the suit with aggressive force. He sat down, checking his watch and tapping his foot nervously. He had no idea that 45 floors above him, the person he was demanding to see was currently watching him on a security
Really?
monitor, sipping coffee and waiting for the perfect moment to crush him. I was in the middle of a high-stakes briefing with my legal team
Okay.
as we moved down the long corridor of the 45th floor. 3 of the most ruthless corporate attorneys in Manhattan flanked me, their leather folios pressed against their chests as I issued rapid-fire instructions regarding the
Coming to
liquidity
get you.
clause of the Alpha Tech contract. We were a phalanx of dark suits and ambition, moving with the synchronized rhythm of predators on the front. The hallway was lined with slow to see.
I had 2 more to do. 2 more to do. Then it's gonna be
Illuminating
time
the
to go.
abstract art on the wall and the polished marble beneath. As we passed the central elevator bay, the soft chime of a bell announced an arrival. I did not break my stride. I did not turn my head. I kept my eyes focused on the document in my hand, my posture rigid and commanding. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw the brushed steel doors slide open. Brad stepped out into the executive foyer. He looked small against the scale of the architecture. The orange visitor badge on his lapel clashed horribly with his navy suit, and he was sweating slightly despite the climate-controlled air. He was accompanied by a stone-faced security officer who looked like he could snap a baseball bat in half.
Now this is a value. Arby $7.99 meat and 3 box.
Energy is all around us. It's how we move, grow, and build, supporting Ohio jobs, unwavering in the pursuit of a more affordable and reliable energy future. With smart policies, Ohio is unstoppable.
Now this is a value.
Would you fix this painting for me?
And 3 box.
Energy is all around us. Exciting move, grow.
At this point, you're probably not avoiding therapy because of stigma. You're probably avoiding therapy because you've become very good at coping. So good that you stop.
Ohio is instant.
Brad took a step forward, adjusting his cuffs, trying to summon the arrogance he had displayed at the party. Then he saw us. Or rather, he saw me. I was about 40 feet away, walking away from him. My back was turned, but there are things about a person that are hard to disguise. My height, the way I carry my shoulders, the specific texture of my hair, which I wore in the same style as the night before. Brad stopped dead in his tracks, causing the security guard to almost bump into me. He squinted, his eyes narrowing as he tried to process the visual information. For a fleeting second, the truth tried to push through his wall of denial. He recognized me. I could see it in the way his head tilted to the side, but his brain simply refused to accept the data. It was a cognitive glitch. In Brad world, Simone was a loser, a nobody, a charity case. Therefore, the woman commanding a team of high-priced lawyers could not be Simone. It was a logical impossibility. I heard his voice echo slightly in the quiet hallway. He was muttering to himself, but in his nervousness, his volume control was off. That is weird, he said, scratching his chin. That woman looks exactly like my sister-in-law. He paused, watching me turn the corner toward the boardroom. Then he let out a short, dismissive laugh. Nah, could not be. Must be one of the cleaning staff. He turned to the security guard, a smirk returning to his face. You guys treat your janitors pretty well here, huh? Letting them wear suits. I guess that is where all the investor money goes. Or maybe she is the lady who waters the plants. The security guard did not even blink. He simply gestured with a gloved hand toward the waiting room. This way, Mr. Miller. You can have a seat until you are called. Brad shook his head, dismissing the image of me from his mind. He was so confident in his superiority that he rationalized seeing me in a power suit as seeing a janitor in a uniform. He walked toward the holding pen, convinced he was the most powerful person on the floor, completely unaware that the janitor he had just insulted was about to become his executioner. The holding area was uncomfortable, not because of the furniture, which was Italian leather and cost more than a mid-sized sedan, but because of the silence. Brad sat alone, tapping his foot against the carpet, his eyes darting around the room. He checked his reflection in the darkened window of the conference room, smoothing back his hair for the 10th time. He pulled out his index cards, muttering his opening hook under his breath. Alpha Tech is not just a company, it is a movement. No, that sounds too cheesy. Alpha Tech is the future of integrated logistics. Yes, that is it. Strong, professional. He took a deep breath, adjusting his tie, trying to quell the rising nausea in his stomach. He had bet everything on this meeting. His reputation, his finances, and his ego were all sitting on the table. Finally,
That is
the heavy
the
oak
number
door swung
6
open.
is
A young assistant with terrified eyes stepped out. Mr. Miller, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The partners are ready for you now. Brad stood up, buttoning his jacket. It is showtime, he whispered to himself. He marched past the assistant and into the boardroom. It was a cavernous space dominated by a 20-foot table made of reclaimed walnut. The view behind it was breathtaking, a panoramic sweep of the Manhattan skyline that made the cars below look and Brad didn't look at the view. He looked at the empty chair. The room was silent. There was no team of investors waiting with open arms. Just a single empty chair at the head of the table. He hesitated, standing awkwardly near the door. Hello, he called out, his voice cracking slightly. Suddenly, a side door opened. It wasn't the assistant this time. It was a woman. She walked in with a sprite of consumed oxygen in the room. She was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that fit her like second skin, the fabric shimmering slightly under the recessed skin. It was the kind of tailoring that screamed $5,000 without a single logo. She carried nothing but a thin tablet. Brad squinted. The woman looked familiar, but the context was wrong. The energy was wrong. This woman radiated power, not subservience. She did not look at him. She walked straight to the head of the table, pulled out the leather executive chair, and sat down. She placed the tablet on the table with a soft click and finally raised her eyes. Please sit down, Brad, she said, her voice cool and commanding. We have a lot to discuss. Brad's knees almost gave in. He knew that voice. He knew the why, but his brain was screaming in protest. No, it is impossible. Simone, he picked the back of the nearest chair for support. Simone, he stammered, a nervous laugh bubbling up in his throat. What are you doing? Did you sneak in here? You are going to get us both arrested. Get out of that chair before the boss comes in. I did not move. I simply tapped the screen of my tablet, bringing up the logo of Horizon Ventures. I am the boss, Brad. And right now you are trespassing in my boardroom. Sit down. Brad shot up from his chair, as if the leather seat suddenly turned into his bed. His face went from pale to a deep blotchy red in a matter of seconds. He looked at me sitting at the head of the table and then glanced frantically at the door, expecting the real boss to walk in at any moment. He pointed a shaking finger at me, his voice dropping to a frantic hiss. Simone, have you lost your mind? What are you doing in here? Get out of the chair immediately. Jesus, if the partners walk in and see the cleaning lady trying to place the CEO, you are going to get fired on the spot. I did not move a muscle. I simply watched him manage my expression completely interested. Brad took a step toward me, waving his hands as if shooing away a stray dog. Did you bring the water pitchers? Is that it? Fine, just leave the water and go. I will try to cover for you. I will tell them I was just asking you to dust the table. But you have to leave right now before the senior partner arrives. Do you have a death wish? He was sweating profusely, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. I almost felt sorry for him. He was so trapped in his own prejudice that he literally could not see what was right in front of his face.